I've just discovered a new cult operating in Victoria, and wow, what a doozy. The subtitle on their website proudly declares, "Where freedom of choice is paramount," yet the testimonies of ex-members describe the exact opposite. What I want to focus on right now is what they've ranked third on their website, a video glorifying Sigmund Freud.
And what is not understood about Sigmund was his job and his purpose in that lifetime was to chart the mind, to chart how people thought, how they processed those thoughts, and how those thoughts transferred into behaviors. That was his job, and that was why he sat for such long periods of times, allowing clowns to counsel themselves. And he just simply listened for thousands of hours charting the mind, collecting data as to how the mind worked. He would say today, from the spirit world, that he is more sure today of how correct he was then than what he thought when he was alive.
That alone should put people on alert. At this point, we need to collectively recognise that any group or individual who praises Freud deserves to be approached with caution. I'm not going to accuse Freud of direct criminal wrongdoing, but his contempt for victims and his role in normalising abuse is undeniable. To be perfectly clear, what I'm about to say about Freud is not meant to insinuate that Sphinx spirituality, either anyone within the organisation or the organisation as a whole, is involved in SA behaviour. Just the same as what I'm about to say is not to insinuate that Freud was directly involved in SA. But what I am saying is that upholding Freud's opinions that are inadvertently harmful ignore the impact of SA. It is ableist behaviour. All of Freud's hypotheses link back to seduction theory, the Oedipus complex and the Electra complex, and the passion in which I know he was wrong about these things, plus his whole myth interpretation, like trauma theory, and not to mention the whole rubbish about the penis envy and Madonna whore complex, is all very strong. So to hear someone praise Freud and unilaterally say that he was right boils my blood. This is a type of rhetoric that is basically known as stochastic terrorism, in that the words can't be linked directly back to harm, but they are careless expressions of an ideology that has harmed people. It's like saying racist comments, but never actually behaving in a racist way, or just simply saying things that encourages other people to be racist. The act of giving approval to racism is harmful. And so it's in that sense that praising Freud is also very harmful. Basically, we will never know just how many people have been impacted as a result of Freud's commentary on SA, because the chain of influence is so complicated. But one thing we can be absolutely certain of is that Freud did not condemn SA. He normalised it, and he did not emphasise the harm that SA did to people. And so for this woman to praise Freud, all I can say is we need to cancel Freud. Let's cut to the chase. Freud didn't just popularise the idea that when a woman says no, she really means yes. He actively framed women's objections to sexual harassment as hysteria. Take his case study of a 14-year-old girl whom Freud diagnosed as having hysteria after she ran away from her father's married friend. Pause and actually think about that. A married man attempted to kiss his friend's 14-year-old daughter. The child fled, and Freud interpreted her behaviour as irrational, because in his view, a young woman should feel sexual excitement at the sexual interest of older men. I feel angry just saying that out loud. Freud may not have personally assaulted anyone, but he absolutely enabled abuse. He normalised it through theories that reframed violations as fantasy, desire or pathology, particularly when the victim was female or a child. His suggestions that sexualised dynamics within families were normal also had devastating consequences. And we cannot overstate his influence in the past century. From institutional abuse, especially within the Catholic Church, to judges dismissing rape claims on the grounds that science suggested no might mean yes. Freud's ideas provided intellectual cover for harm. And so, frankly, I don't give a damn what marginal good people might still claim Freud contributed to psychology. As far as I'm concerned, he's like Palpatine, the Dark Lord of the Force, using psychology theory to excuse or justify abuse. Which is evil, whichever way you want to paint the narrative. And so, to extend that metaphor a little further, it has been the children of trauma, survivors, clinicians and researchers who have led the resistance, much like Luke Skywalker confronting the dark side. And if you're thinking that makes Jung the equivalent of Darth Vader, you're on the right track. And because this always comes up whenever I critique Freud, Jung or psychoanalysis more broadly, here are my credentials. I completed a 4-year certificate course in theology. I'm an art teacher, which means I understand history through visual symbolism, much of which is rooted in religion and spirituality. I'm also a qualified art therapist, and my master's thesis involved researching the neuroscience of creativity. And more recently, I completed a graduate diploma in psychology. I am a deep researcher. And so I know exactly where Freud and Jung went wrong, from both the theological aspect and the psychological aspect. And yeah, sure, you could call them men of their time, but to me, that is irrelevant today. What matters is that we stop granting their erroneous opinions as having any credibility. If ever there was a time when cancel culture needs to come in, it is now. We need to cancel Freud. His theories are not supported by modern science or historical accuracy. He was, in effect, a grifter. And in my view, many of his contemporary devotees are no better. Any cult-like figure, from Jordan Peterson to this new group that I've discovered today, who try to bolster their own claims by quoting Freud, immediate alarm bells should be ringing, because that is actually classic cult psychology, and I could just go off on another tangent about how, in my opinion, Freud appropriated Aristotle, but again, that's a topic for another day. So yeah, to me, it's just obvious, and so I'll say it plainly. If someone references Freud as a credible authority, and especially if they are running a self-help group, they should be treated with serious suspicion. His ideology is fundamentally incompatible with freedom, and any group that elevates him by championing freedom of choice is telling on itself.